Let's see, starting recording. Almost there. Beautiful. All right. Welcome everybody for to the Beyond the Track. This is February of 2021, our favorite year so far. Better than last year, right? That's what I hear. Quick introductions as usual. I'm Claudio La Sala. For my personal like on-track footage and photos and stuff like that I normally use to just track my own progress. You find me out there as a 3-lap rider. My level of expertise is always there. I always make sure to share that because I'm so far from being an expert on anything of the things that we talk about here. I'm just a guy who keeps asking questions and sharing whatever I've learned along the way. And as usual, big thanks to the supporters of Beyond the Track on Patreon. That's always very helpful to just help us, encourage us to keep this initiative going. And of course, you guys, the ones who are joining in tonight, helping in, putting together this content, as well as folks who are watching this later, which is something that does happen. On the beginning, I didn't think that was a thing that, people would, click and then watch. But after I started this 3 years ago now, and then I go out to tracks, around the country, I've had people walk up to me and say, "Oh, thanks for, you're that YouTube guy. Thanks for putting out those videos. That's pretty cool stuff." So I was like, as long as there's somebody out there, clicking and watching, we're bringing some sort of value to the community. So thank you very much for watching and, dropping comments and things like that. So what is the Beyond the Track? For those who are not familiar with it, it started as a community. We get together, like-minded riders, that we're not just riders that go out and ride around in circles or taking a few turns, but we are very methodical about how we do things. We like planning our track days and preparing for it, and then holding each other accountable when we're at the track. If we say, well, I'm going to be working on trail braking into turn 1, well, we let the other guys know, because that way they keep that in mind and they say, oh, you may want to try this or that, or this is how I see it from the outside. It's just a way to collective learn, as opposed to just, I guess, just going and riding without actually making progress. So these guys that join the Beyond the Track are usually, no, we want to get better at this, and of course safer as we go. We started, of course, with this as an in-person meeting. With pandemic and all that, we started doing that online last year, which is actually working out even better, because that way we get folks who may live, far away from us, who can actually get to join us and share some tips as well. All of these these meetings are recorded. They are all available for free up there on the website, beyondthetrack.net. There's over like 43 hours of content that goes all the way from prepping for your very first track day, to riding Circuit of the Americas, to, how do you use action cameras to actually improve your riding? How do you do track analytics when you get all that data from your lap timer? What do you do with that? What can you learn from it? So all these things, like much like a lot of people say, oh, for that, there's an app for that. We are almost getting to a point where there's a BTT video for that. When people say, oh, how do you use action cameras? There's a BTT video for that. How do you do track day planning or debrief? There's a BTT video for that. So it's just a way to help out others. So if you do know of somebody who's like thinking about maybe doing their first track day and have lots of questions, there's a BTT video for that. So just share the link with folks, and over time we grow our community by doing so. If you're interested in becoming a patron of the Beyond the Track, you go on the website. You're going to find ways that you can, pledge your or make your pledge to the BTT, which again helps us keep this thing rolling. We have the BTT website. There's a whole open area for everybody with all the free videos, and there's also a membership area that patrons get access to, where we have tools to help manage the costs that we have when we ride at the track, because it is an expensive sport. So you want to, do it smartly so that you get to do more of it, because we're all, addicts after we get started on that. We have tools for like checklists, so that you don't, turn up at the track and you forget. your tire warmer, the bike keys, whatever it is that you need to have a great day at the track. You don't want to run into that. So we have checklists for that. Track day plans, like I said, we put together a plan. Okay, next time out, I'm going to work on this fundament of riding a bike. Write down, prepare for it, get out there, execute the plan, ride, have a lot of fun, but be deliberate about go back home, do a debrief, right? How did it go? What did I work on? What worked? What didn't work? What are the areas of improvement for next time at that track or at whichever track, whatever the case might be. And next, so previously on the Beyond the Track, there are videos for that. 2 years ago, when I first got my my NSR 50, right, my first mini GP bike, I got hooked like right off the bat, had a lot of fun, and shared that at a BTT meeting 2 years ago. And then over time, like about a year later, many BTT riders, also got their, mini bikes, got hooked as well. So last year we had another meeting just talking about our overall experiences riding the mini bikes. What do we get from it? Why is it so much fun? How does the experience translate to when we ride the bigger bikes? And then, how to find a mini bike. That's another question that people always ask. How do you actually find those bikes? They don't come around as easy, right? So we talked a lot about that as well for people who are interested in maybe getting into mini bikes as well. And then, of course, much like how it happened, at least to me on the big bike, after a while, people started asking, well, and then what about racing, right? How is it different from track days? So we had, folks joining us, like CMRA racers, sharing their experiences. And then I did some CMRA racing as well to get, myself some firsthand experience and share my learnings with the community. And then, of course, now for the mini bikes, same questions are coming up, right? What about racing the mini bikes? While I didn't do any sprint racing, we have had both Garrett and Earl sharing some of the TMGP experiences with sprint racing, which we can revisit tonight by all means. But the bigger part of the conversation tonight is going to be about endurance. And the reason why is because, the BTT friends decided to put together a team and, do some endurance. So there are the questions, what is it all about? Who get involved? Where do we do that? When? How much? Why? All those questions. So when we have questions, what do? Well, we go look for people who actually know something, even if it's like 2 steps ahead of what we know, right? So tonight we have several specialists here, right? You guys have already heard of Garrett and Earl, right? And tonight we're also joined by Seth and Sonia, right? Who you can see on the photos there looking amazing, right? There you go. So that's it, guys. So without further ado, let's start this conversation. I would like to start with answering the question, why? Why would anybody consider getting into endurance racing? Anybody who wants?
You want us to answer that?
It's a conversation like for you guys. Why did you guys get into it?
I was dragged into it, almost literally.
Okay.
My friend Derek Murphy got me into riding, and at that point he said, "Now that you're riding bikes with us, you definitely need to race bikes." And so I don't think I really had a choice necessarily. He just said, "This is the race we're going to, and I expect you to be there, and we'll have a good time." And he purchased the Grom that we still endurance race with, and he finished prepping it. It's an old CMRA bike that someone else prepped for CMRA, and literally we loaded it up in my truck and drove to Crescent. This was the second to last race of the 2019 season. I had never raced any motorcycle anywhere before. I had never done anything other than ride probably 8 or 10, maybe 15 days of riding at speed sports. on
Okay.
a variety of bikes. And then I found myself with two friends endurance racing a Grom in Crescent. And I was new enough to it and nervous enough. I don't think I touched a knee down at all during that race. I was very much the new guy. Whenever you watch an endurance race, there will always be like one person who is noticeably new. And I love seeing that because that means somebody has stepped out of their comfort zone and is racing. And in that race at Crescent in 2019, I was very much the new guy. Um, uh, and now I raced two races that year. Um, I raced every race last season, and then we're prepping to race a full season this year.
Nice. That's very cool. And that's the full season with TMGP, right?
With TMGP, that's the only organization I've raced with so far. I don't do or have not done big bike stuff. I did my track stuff started in cars. I started in autocross, and then I did track days and time trial in cars. So I've driven tracks in a car all over the country. I've driven 30 different tracks all over the country.
Oh, wow.
So I've been on a bunch of tracks in a car, but I don't do big bike stuff. Or maybe I could say I don't do big bike stuff yet. I've stuck to minis.
Until you're peer pressured into it.
Yeah, that's literally what's going to happen. Is somebody's going to make me go to a big bike
Yeah,
thing,
it's
and
not
then I'm
even
going to become
peer
there.
pressure, it's a mandate, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe you
Can't
just
help
need the
it, look at it.
definition. You know, big bike is 17-inch wheels, not the engine size.
yeah. That's kind of where I'm at because we have a in the garage between my friend and I we've got 4 Honda RS 125s, which most big bike people wouldn't consider big bikes, but they've got
Until they
17-inch
get
wheels and they definitely feel quick. And just today was the first time I rode. I have a KTM RC 390 Cup that I just picked up, and I got that together and rode it around the neighborhood today. And I think for most track people, an RC 390 is one of the little bikes there. But when you've been riding around 8.5 horsepower NSF 100s, an RC 390 definitely feels like a big bike when you get on it.
Yeah, it feels like you're using your full body.
It's so tall, so tall.
Yeah, and you know, I could, you know, if we're gonna tail on the topic on why we get endurance, you know, Seth, I actually kind of dragged Garrett into it as well. He didn't have a choice. The reason the reason I did that was because through the 25 years of me riding both track and street, um, unfortunately not in that order, I, I learned that endurance was one of my biggest weak points, and it was because I was an athlete in high school. I could do, you know, ran marathons, whatever, but for some reason, the muscles that I needed to both stabilize and focus on the track were failing after X amount of laps, and I had to pull out. And so it was one of those deals where, you know, I told Garrett, I was like, if you're going to be serious about this, there's one thing you have to learn. And him just being one of those picky eaters, you know, just eating when he wants, and the nutrition and everything, the training came all after that. The one thing that I had control over at the time was actual time on track. And I was like, the best way to do this is to get him in a team with other kids and let him just ride and get that seat time on the track. And if nothing else, you're going to be tired. You're going to learn what that time on track feels like. So you don't have to worry about that, you know, when you're sprinting.
Cool. So, piggybacking on that, on the idea why. So that reason, the having fun, is like, it's probably like the top reason that I hear from people. I hardly ever hear racers saying, "Oh, it's because we want to win the championship." It's usually because, oh, it's just a lot of fun. You know, it's the camaraderie, it's riding with folks. So this, can you guys describe just a little more of it? Like what makes it fun? What is like, man, these are the highlights of doing endurance.
You, I'll tell you this. I mean, being as how I have not ridden in endurance for so many years, but get what I've seen with the kids, they have this innate ability to connect with people and actually, it's so funny. The very first team that we did last year, the biggest problem the kids had was deciding what team name they wanted. But then once they started, it was like there was this. Yeah, we went through some issues with who does how many laps. Is it going to be times? Is it going to be amount of laps? What? Yeah, but it's more of an evolution in terms of a rider to where you learn to work with others. Yeah, you can build endurance and all that good stuff, and the trophies, honestly, not even that. And I think one of the most mature things I ever saw last year was we needed, or there was a fifth rider on our team, Aiden. We needed Aiden. When it came time for the trophies, Aiden was like, "No, I'm okay." There was not an extra trophy for him. Bless his heart, even though we placed. Um, and he was just like, no, I do it because it helps everybody, and the communication and the passover for that communication is just so increased. Your synapses are going. It's not just you, right? It's other people, and then you start watching. And as the season progressed last year, what I noticed with the kids, especially, was that more kids started stepping to the fence and they were watching to learn what their teammates were doing. And that's something that I was like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. I usually just kind of stand back on the sidelines and just kind of observe. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the topic.
Motorcycling, by its nature, is an individual sport. There's only room for one person on the bike, and endurance riding is a way that, like Earl says, endurance riding makes an individual sport into a team sport. Because sprint racing is, even if you have sort of a team of people around you, you have one guy riding. And in endurance racing, you have 2 to 5 people, and you all kind of count on each other to not drop the bike, and to do quick pit stops and to watch for the person coming in. And to do it well, you do have to work as a team to do well. And I really like that. There's been some fantastic friendships made through endurance racing.
That's very cool, and I think that's a good segue into the how part, right? So you got together folks who are like-minded. Okay, let's put together a team. How do we do that? What are the main things that we have to consider? Well, like sometimes people think, well, do each rider get to ride their own bike, or is it the same bike? So what's the experience like from that angle?
In TMGP, you enter a motorcycle. So the team is a group of up to 5 people riding a single motorcycle. And that's there should be, in a normal season, there should be 8 events throughout the year, 7 4-hour races and 1 6-hour race. And the rule structure of TMGP says a team for a year may have up to 5 people. So at any individual event, you can have 5 people, and then if you shift people in and out of that, it actually counts as a new team. So if you're riding for points, you can only have 5 people total on that. I'm not sure you really need to ride for points. I think the riding is just an experience in itself. But at the pointy end of the field or whatever's going on, there are some people who are very fast and are competing against each other as a team. So they organize that. But I don't know if there's any racing I've ever done that's easier to get into than endurance racing. To me, it's actually much less intimidating than sprint racing is. I enjoy it more than I enjoy sprint racing. But you need a bike that's legal, and TMGP has the classes for that. They don't race as many classes in endurance as they race in sprints. They only have the F7, F6, and F5, and then the Grom classes. So they don't have unlimited and some of the other things that they do. It's the class structure is much more condensed. And if you have a legal bike for one of those classes and you can put together a team of, really it's between 1 and 5 people. There's people who do the events all by themselves as well. You have to get your license, which is a 45-minute class that they hold in the morning before those events, which is flags and those basic things that you would do no matter what. You start with any organization. You have to understand this is how we do things. These are the flags, and we want to understand that you know how to do that stuff. And I've had people talk to me and they're a little worried about passing the class, and I have to point out to them that the youngest you can race in TMGP is 8 years old, and the licensing class is written for people who are reading at like a 3rd grade level because they're 8 years old. so it's not hugely difficult to do. You just have to pay attention and do that sort of thing. But if you've got a legal bike, safety wired, has catch cans, you've got a couple people, you all pass the class, you are racing endurance. It's just that easy.
Sweet. Cool. I dig that. As far as like, yeah, go ahead. Somebody else
I'm
had
sorry. I just one thing, because Seth reminded me about when he was talking earlier about bikes. He is absolutely right. We can only use one bike as a team. The transponder is associated with that bike. And obviously we've talked about the race monitor app and tracking it. Now you can, swap bikes, but you're gonna lose. I mean, that transponder has to be attached to the bike. So if that bike, and Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that if that bike is out of commission for whatever reason, for a mechanical failure, then you're not able to swap that transponder to a different bike.
No, you stop scoring laps for that event.
Exactly.
Jeff is the organizer, and you can ask Jeff if you can, as a team, swap bikes to continue just for the experience of racing, but you stop scoring laps. And that's how the events are scored, is purely on laps.
Right.
Whoever gets the most laps wins. It's an incredibly simple system.
Yeah, I was kind of confused about this like a couple of weeks ago, because we were having a conversation about this, and I was like, wait, and I remember the very first endurance race that Garrett did. He did it by himself because we didn't know anything about endurance, and we showed up at the first race, and the only person we knew to look for was Cody, and so we looked for Cody, and Cody was already on a team, and so we did a couple of track days before and whatever, but I try to do as much research as I could, between work and everything else. But we showed up, and I said, you know what, son, just ride. But he rode 4 hours by himself.
Crazy. So here's a question that I have actually for you guys. Like, so Earl has been working with Garrett as a coach, right? So he's watching and seeing what's going on, and then Seth and Sonia, you guys are riding, right? How's that experience for you guys? That's got to be something else, right?
I'll let Sonia start with this one.
Well, we always did that. Like, there was never really coaching going on. He was always on the bike, and we'd do stuff. Lead follow drills were a really big thing, and every so often he'd get off the bike and have me get off the bike and point something out to change lines. But we were always riding separately from each other, so having each other on the track at the same time wasn't really that big of a deal, because that's how it always was. And so we'll watch each other when we're not on track at the same time. But with a team of 5 kids, there's always going to be 4 other dads there, like kind of watching and stuff. So it's been okay.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
now, Seth, from your standpoint.
Yeah, I started riding slightly before Sonia did, and Sonia watched me riding. And of my 4 kids, she was the one who looked at and said, "Yes, I want to do that," like immediately. And so she ended up with the first bike she rode, the XR70, and a set of leathers, and started riding. And so she's always ridden with me. And so coaching has primarily been after we finish a session, we'll talk about what we saw with each other. We have AIM solos on both bikes. So there's been times when we don't always do it, but we'll pull up data and overlay our data traces. She'll wonder why, in the past, was wondering why she wasn't as fast as me. and I'll pull up a data trace and I can go, okay, right here in this corner, this is where you lose speed. I make up a second and a half here and you never quite gain it back. And by looking at that, she's been able to pick up a lot of things, and she's now faster than me on every track and on every bike that we ride together. So we don't endurance race together. We race on separate teams. I race.
Question.
Yeah, I race with my friends on the Grom, and we probably would have invited her, but for someone who's 4'11",
Yeah.
she's 4'11", and at 4'11", a Grom is a pretty big bike. It's big enough she's not comfortable riding it, and certainly not riding it at the pace we like to ride at for endurance racing. So last year she rode she rode Kellen's bike, the Goobers endurance team, which was a KLX 110, which is just a bike that's sized better for all the kids that rode it last year. And we actually picked up.
That was a team that we all the kids rode on. Yep.
Yeah, the 5 kids rode on that team last year. That was the Goobers, and they did a fantastic job. And some of them went their separate ways this year, but Stan Funkhauser and I talked about what we wanted to do this year, and they're sort of reforming some of the Goobers around another KLX 110 that we bought with the intention of them riding it and hopefully doing well with it. But it's going to be interesting. It has been interesting because I'm racing with my own team. And there has been at least 1 or 2 sessions where I'm out there on a bike and she's out there on a bike at the same time during an endurance race. And certainly last year, that was a case of me getting passed by my daughter and being like, oh, yeah, so I guess she's on the bike now. And they would zoom right by us. And it's a little different because Earl will talk about, as a parent watching your kid race, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. And there's accidents that happen, there's crashes that happen while they're endurance racing, and the Goobers had crashes last year. And so when you're standing on the side of the track, you can worry about your kid, but when you're on a bike, you have to focus on that. And that has been a significant challenge for me to focus on what's going on right now versus worrying about that. And the other dads did a phenomenal job taking care of that team so that I could do my own thing and take care of my own team at that time.
Nice.
Yeah, the evolution last year was actually incredible from what I saw. It went from me, and I can only speak from just watching from the sideline, due to all the injuries that I've sustained riding over the years. I'm not able to ride, but watching the kids at the last endurance race, oh my gosh, that chemistry was that 6-hour endurance race at the very end. That was impressive. It was something, because and that's one of the biggest things. It's like you learn how to communicate, you learn how to have these unspoken cues, and even from a bike perspective as a coach, or whatever it is you're doing from the sidelines as a dad, whether it's helping whether it's just somebody to hold a fire extinguisher while somebody has to refuel, like all these little details that could take a second off before somebody actually gets back on asphalt. Those things you learn, but then they click as well on the sidelines. So just making that piece of the puzzle even more seamless and increasingly better as the season went on. That was pretty impressive on the part of the kids, and I was like, man, this is good.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah, just it's all about communication. Once you get communication down, you've basically got the race. But well, I mean, you have to have some sort of riding skill. You have to know how to ride a bike, but communication is all about it.
And
Yeah,
from
Garrett,
this-
what are the questions I had for you that well, or are you riding a team bike that maybe you ride once every 5 weeks or something like that. How well do you know the bike that you're riding endurance on? Because for us to be riding a bike, none of us have ridden, except for Jesse once, for 5 laps. How common an experience is that where you're on a completely foreign motorcycle where maybe the levers don't fit your hands right, the foot position is a little.
I think this is where the kids have an advantage because the Garrett can talk to this too. The kids ride everything. When you go to a track day, the kids are swapping bikes, and anything they fit on, they'll ride. And so them just hopping on a bike that they've ridden maybe once before, go out, do 5 laps, be warmed up, they're like, cool, I got this. And they'll just go ride it and not think twice about the fact that they're racing. For us adults, it's I don't know, you just adapt. The thing with endurance racing is you don't have to, if you're trying to win everything, you want to go out on your first lap and be going hard right away. The reality is most of us are not riding at that level where somebody comes into the pits and you hop on a bike and you go out and you're riding like your pace right away. You have 3 or 4 or 5 laps where you're warming up and getting into the groove and in just getting the feel on the bike and getting the feel for traffic. And at least as far as TMGP, our sprint races are only 6 laps long. So you don't really get a chance to warm up. You have to go 100% right away. And endurance racing, like, even if you're not super familiar with the bike, if you haven't been riding it a lot lately, 3 or 4 or 5 laps into it, you just settle into a groove. One of the reasons we run a Grom, none of us like the Grom, actually. I've owned it. I just bought it for the second time. And 3 of our team members have owned that bike so far because nobody really likes it, but we love racing it because it is a comfortable, easy bike to race that you can kind of put people on. It's not fatiguing. There's nothing weird about it. It just sort of works.
It's very forgiving.
That makes it a really easy endurance bike to ride. And the kids KLX was the same way. It just flat worked. And that's one of the things I'd recommend for people with bikes is I don't think you want like a sharp, edge of your seat, hard bike to ride. You want a bike you're going to go out and ride half an hour on and come off and be like, yeah, that was fun. That wasn't hard. That was just a neat thing to do. And that's sort of the comfort level that makes the team experience a little bit better.
That's very well said, Seth, actually. There's a lot to be said about a bike that it doesn't have to be the fastest. It's the one that you're the most comfortable on. Your ergonomics are not necessarily going to be the best, but you get out there, it's going to be forgiving. That's, hence endurance. That's what you need. So yeah, because I mean, the analogy that I used with Garrett last year was, because he played football, and I don't even know if he remembers this, but I said track sprinters use spikes with very, very spiked shoes with very, very thin soles. They aren't meant for a marathon. A marathon is meant to be run with very cushioned, forgiving shoes. That's the mindset in an endurance race. And how are you going to get your mind set in the right way if you're constantly afraid of the bike that you're on, right? You need to have some trust saying that, okay, this thing is going to be a little bit forgiving. Okay. And my teammates are going to be cool with the fact that, I'm going to hand them off, and I don't need to be the one that needs to really feel the best on this bike. It feels good for everybody. So
I'm very impressed with the teams that go out in endurance race, the 2-stroke 65s, because although I love
oh my God, yes,
riding those, the idea that you would do a half hour or 40 minutes on a 65 is genuinely horrifying. because after 10 laps on a 65 on any of the tracks we ride, I am mentally, if not physically, exhausted. They ask so much of you. And so my brain is just melting out my ears after 10 laps. And, so I'm like 12 minutes in. And the idea of doing that for 18 more minutes would be just terrifying. So those teams that do run 65s, more power to them. Those guys and girls are just built of stuff that I'm not built of.
Seth, there's a sacrifice.
Oh, I think I heard both Garrett and Edgar coming in at the same time.
Yeah, my bad.
Oh, no problem, man. Hey, well, hi everybody. I joined a little late, but Seth, your comment about the 65 is even more interesting when you actually look at the teams. They seem to be the most mismatched size team members out there. I mean, you have itty bitty little lightweight people and some heavy people all sharing those little 65s, and some of them really fast. So it's really interesting how they can manage that with that widespread and weight and size on the riders on the same bike.
Edgar, that's a very astute observation. A lot of that actually, and I don't know if this is the way those teams think because I'm not inside their head, but if I was me looking on the outside, I would put the heavier riders on the spring compressions or the laps or whatever to where they put the loads on springs to where it actually breaks it in a little bit for the lighter riders that are the faster riders just by physics alone. Not saying that's what actually goes on, but that is actually really interesting and something to explore.
So
And that's where.
Go ahead, Garrett.
So that's where having a like a easy to ride KLX 4 or KLX 110 comes in. If you're on even like a 2-stroke 65, it's gonna hurt after like what Seth said, like 10 laps. It's just gonna hurt. It's just painful. I've been grateful to have Viet. He let me ride his 65, and when I tell you that thing was so scary, like I had an Ovali 160, and that 65 scared me. So that's where having a 110, like a KLX 110 or any sort of 4-stroke motard comes in. It's just something that's forgiving.
Is there any tuning you guys do to mellow a bike out and just make it a little more chill to go out and ride? Do you stuff a tennis ball in the airbox or something to sort of tame the bike down, calm it down?
I don't think racing a Grom, you need to tame anything about a Grom.
That's true.
This is mini GP, guys. We need more horsepower, not less.
We did,
right.
When we put the kids' bike together this year, we did spend a bunch of time with Sonia trying to make sure the initial throttle response was. We tried to mellow that out, because as you get tired, that whole you go into a corner and you roll off the throttle and you tip the bike in and then you roll back on the throttle. And if you've got sort of a violent coming back on the throttle and it unsettles the bike, you can ride through that. That's just one of those things that you can learn to ride through. But if it happens every corner over the course of half an hour, it's exhausting. And having a bike that comes back on the throttle smooth just takes less energy. So anything you can do setup wise, which will make the bike require less energy for you to ride, is something to do. So you're not really mellowing the bike out so much as you're trying to take away those things that are sharp and difficult, that sometimes make bikes fast.
Yeah. Is there anything you get on a bike and you say, God, there's no way I'm going to ride it in this condition? What are certain things you would say are essential? If it does this, you need to fix it now because you're going to have 5 different people on it. is there anything that stands out, or is it like the demolition derby where the cars go around in the figure eight, and as long as it moves forward when you press the gas pedal, good enough. Just go out and have fun and go for it.
And that's where practice comes in.
I'll take a stab at it, Seth, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay.
No, Jeff does such an incredible job. So does his family with the tech on the bikes. I have never, ever, ever. Well, I can't say that I have subjectively seen a demolition derby out there. It gets hairy, but that is it goes back to comfort on the bike. But I don't think that Jeff or his family would allow any bike on there that, I mean, yes, there are engine mods that are going to be done. There are fork suspensions, whatever, but it is what the team does. And honestly, it is what I've seen is it is the bikes that are the most resilient, not necessarily the fastest, the ones that are the most resilient. So what are your wear and tears, your forks, your chain, your tires, right? I mean, yes, you've got the gas, you've got the ignition, you've got the acceleration, but like, what's your wear and tear? And once you take care of the wear and tear and you make sure that is on the lowest common denominator, then everyone's just having fun. And I think they do a really good job at Team GP with the endurance, in terms of that. And Seth, you can kind of piggyback on that and disagree with anything I've said. So.
No, the whole thing sort of self-polices itself, because you have to put together a bike that someone can ride for at least half an hour and then rest and then get back on the bike and ride for half an hour again. Because rider changes add, if you don't have to fuel, a rider change adds about 20 seconds to a lap. That's what we figured. If you look at lap times and you're running 110s on a lap that you do a rider change, all of a sudden it'll be a 130. That lap will be. So it adds 15 to 20 seconds to a lap. And so you can't change, if you want to do well, you can't be changing riders every 15 minutes. It just adds too much time to your day. So everybody, even though this is for fun, everybody comes into this with a strategy based around when you have to refuel and when you do that. And so most rider stints are between half an hour and an hour long. And if you have a bike that's too hard to ride, you can't stay on the bike that long. And so that was my earlier comment was going to be, you see very few small GP bikes in endurance racing. And the reason for that is not because they're not good, because they're fantastic. I love my NSF 100. It's a joy and it's fun and it's one of my favorite bikes to ride. But if you told me I had to ride it for half an hour and then get off and rest for half an hour and then get on and ride it for half an hour again, I would think very differently about it, because it asks more of you physically. To do the same lap time on the Grom versus the NSF 100, the NSF 100 is way more enjoyable, like from a pure dynamic standpoint, but must take twice as much energy, physical energy, to run the same lap time.
And I hope you guys don't mind me interjecting here. And it's also comes down to how the bike is built. If it's built for speed, it's not going to do well in an endurance race. If it's built like a motard that's built for endurance, then it will do good in endurance, but it won't do so well in sprints. Kind of got to pick and choose.
Yeah, so let's have that sinking, guys. I think we're in trouble.
No, you guys are just awesome. You'll be fine. So yeah, is this the point where you're going to tell everybody what you're doing this year, Claudio?
Well, what we are doing as a group, right?
Yes, so, what your group is doing.
Right. So, Michael, Jesse, you guys want to in the
Is Jesse still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. So Jesse's the only one that has ridden a bike.
Okay, so we are endurancing this year. We actually got a, I think it's pronounced a KO 125. KO, KO, I always get it mixed up. Yeah, it's a GP setup bike, but I happened to go to Oklahoma and bought it off a guy that raced it over there in Tulsa. And I don't know what they were racing it for, but I rode it today. It's pretty comfortable. We're talking about, and we went from our NSRs to this bike, and the NSR is just so much work to go fast. That riding this GP style bike that's 4-stroke, it feels like a breeze. At least to me, but I only got a few laps on it before the brakes locked up. Yeah, and, we went through maintenance. We did a full flash through and whatnot, but I guess the brakes were, we didn't clean the pistons on them or whatnot, so they got a little sticky, and then after they locked up. So that was the end of that.
So
Well, I think when you guys were asking what is the one thing that you definitely would say, okay, no go here to, I was going to say the front brake. If you're not confident that that thing can hold up after it warms up, you know, into the tail end of your 30 minutes, 20 minutes, if you're pushing it, I've had several occasions with brake fade that scared the heck out of me, even on a mini that put me off the track on the ground. So that's the only one that I would say be thorough.
Mm.
yeah, so we're looking forward to getting out there and actually turning some laps on it. So the character, Jesse also mentioned that we have a tachometer that is a little schizophrenic. Sometimes it's accurate, many times it's not. It depends on what gear it's in. It doesn't keep its pace with the engine. The needle may move independent of the actual engine acceleration. So I suggested we may need to put a piece of tape over the tachometer.
Take it off.
So we will see. So,
It's an air
Basically,
4-stroke. There's no reason for an air-cooled 4-stroke to have a tachometer anyway, except as a vanity piece. You just ride it till the valves float, and then you're like, all right, that's red line, the valves are floating, and you just roll with it.
He is not wrong. Seth, you are not wrong at all. No, like I will tell you guys. I mean, you know, even last year, you know, with the challenges that we had, you know, whether it was the kids deciding amongst themselves, and part of what I did was ask them, do you want to ride laps? Do you want to ride time? Do you want to ride, you know, just everything else? And Garrett running that first endurance race by himself for 4 hours, it was very chaotic for me because I didn't know anybody there. It was just me. But the idea for me in my mind was not to win at all. Matter of fact, I believe we were racing for no points, right, Garrett? Like we literally, he was on his Ovale 160, and Jeff said, "Yep, you can run, but you're not, you know, because we don't have a transponder, we don't have this. We were just green." And so, but he went in and he got the experience, and that's what it's all about, honestly. Like I think the communication and the guys on this, I've hung out with you guys at the track long enough to know that you guys are all a bunch of good guys and girls. So, you know, that is just going to make everybody better riders and have more experience to reflect on, instead of just sprints.
So, question here. Walk us through the process of like, how do we sign up for it? How much does it cost? What is the timeline? Do we have to sign up before race day, or do we sign up on the day? Do we pay for the team, for the bike, by rider? How does that all work?
There's a couple things that are two important things. The registration for the events happens on the day of the events. So there will be before the event, there will be on Facebook or on the webpage, there will be a list of this is what happens at this schedule. This is when the gates open. This is when registration opens. There's no pre-registering. That all happens in the day of the event. You're registering as a team. All your teammates have to be on the form, and they have to sign it and put their emergency contact and that down. If this is your first race, you really need to contact Jeff before the event just to let him know that who needs to take the driver's school. It helps him plan for how many people are going to take the driver's school and get their license that day if you've never raced with TMGP before. The other thing that's extremely important is if you have a minor who's running, they have to have both parents sign the liability release. And then that liability release is good for that track for the rest of the season. So Katie has a liability release, and Denton has a liability release, and Speed Sports has a liability release. All three of those need to be signed by both parents so that a minor can race. And I've seen people get caught out before where dad brings you to the race and mom's not there, and you aren't allowed to race unless they're both there. So for the good thing is that the first race of the year in Katy, they bring the forms for Katy and for Denton. And so if you have both parents there, you can sign those forms and have everything signed for the whole year for the minors. Cost-wise, the 4-hour endurance races have historically been $160 for the team. And then the 6-hour endurance race at Speed Sports costs a bit more because the time is more and because the track costs more. So that's usually $240 for the team. The other thing is you have to pay in cash. You might be able to do a check. I don't know, but there's no credit cards. So
yeah, you can do it. You can do a check.
Yeah, you can do a check or cash, but you can't do a credit card. So if you show up and you don't have money, everybody I know comes to me and asks for money, and I would love it if nobody asked for me for money this year. That would be awesome. That would make me really happy. I've paid for my whole team repeatedly because everybody shows up, and somehow between the last race and this race, they forget the cash thing, and nobody has any cash. So you have to have cash or a check. You have to have cash or a check. You have to have both parents there if there's a minor. Sign up is that morning. Once you'll sign up, they'll tech the bikes. Practice opens. You've usually got 2 hours of practice. Is that right, guys?
Yes.
2 hours of practice, and then driver's meeting and start the race. And that's it. 4 hours, clock to clock.
Yep, you're exactly right. Then between all that time, during the driver's meeting, they will typically explain to you exactly what the rules are, where you need to have for example, if you're refueling, you need to have a fire extinguisher and all this kind of, good stuff. But the cash thing is incredibly important because that is, everyone worries so much about the bike and getting everything ready. The last thing they think about is going to the ATM and getting a couple of $100 out.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah,
And none of the tracks are very close to anything. So if you have to go get money, it's a little bit of a hike.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
Big
Can
time.
you
That
comment
actually-
on the transponder? How does one get one?
Oh, yeah, I was going to, Seth, I'll let you talk about the transponder rentals.
Most people rent transponders. A couple of us own them because we've lived lifestyles where buying a transponder was a good course of action. But almost everybody rents a transponder. They're $15. Is that right? I forget even how much it is to rent one. I'm going to have to rent one this year.
I
'Cause
think
I
it was, it was $15 the last time I had to rent one.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's whatever denomination does not come out of an ATM that you have to get your calculus right.
Bada bing, bada boom.
They have change for you. It's fine. But yeah,
Okay,
you have to
so
run a transponder on the bike, and it's about $15 to rent it. At least that's what it has been, and I'll have to figure that out this year because I only own one transponder, and we're running 2 endurance teams, so I'm going to have to rent one this year as well.
How much is a transponder to buy?
There's 2 options. You can either get the older non-subscription ones where you just buy it and you own it for the rest of your life, those are trading for between $400 and $500, and
Wow.
they actually cost more now than they cost new, because probably 5 years ago, the company that makes them went to a subscription-based thing where you buy the transponder and it's much cheaper. It's $125, something like that. But then you pay whatever the yearly fee is to have the transponder turned on every year. So it depends on what you're doing. If you are running tracks a lot where you need a transponder, purchasing one, either one of the older ones or one of the subscription-based ones, is absolutely worth it. A lot of sanctioning bodies, you're gonna pay between $25 and $50 a day for a transponder, and it very quickly becomes, if you're doing a bunch of events throughout the year, especially big bikes on big tracks, it very much becomes worth it to own your own transponder.
The on the note of the transponders, I will say that one of the things that we worried about last year, or I may have worried about last year, was the mounts for the transponder. When Jeff and them, they have enough, but typically it's first come first serve, and they typically have enough. Sometimes they don't get there. If the mounts for the transponders, we've had to make do with zip ties, and it's worked okay. We were fortunate enough to have, folks on the team have mounts that worked, that were compatible. I don't know if that's an absolute necessity, but I think as long as they're fairly secure and good to go, then you'll be all right. Right, Seth?
Yeah, zip ties are the classic way to do it. I have a mount, again, because I own the transponder and I've had it. Used to have the mount on a car, and now I have the mount on the fork leg. But half a dozen sturdy zip ties will get it zip tied to your fork leg, and it'll work all day. We've been zip tying transponders to. I mean, I've watched people zip tie transponders to $100,000 time trial cars, and so it's just sort of the way it's done. You don't want to lose one because they're expensive if you have to buy it, if you lose, the organization's transponder. But I've never seen that be a problem on the small bikes.
Cool. I'm definitely glad to hear about the cash tip. I would have completely blown that one, guaranteed.
Yeah, you would have come and asked me for cash. I already know it. I can see that coming.
So that's a good point there. Bring cash. If you have a minor, have the liability forms signed by both parents. What else should we include on our checklist? Like, okay, these guys, you have to have these things, and people usually forget them. What else comes to mind?
You don't
Enough fuel.
understand. You don't understand how much you're going to drink. Most of our racing, this is Texas, most of our racing is done when it's warm, and you can't believe how much liquid you're going to go through in the course of a 4-hour race. Last year we learned about the magic of Pedialyte. Pedialyte is gross, and anybody who says it's not gross is wrong. It is gross, but Pedialyte is also, it's utterly magic. You come off the bike after half an hour and you drink a Pedialyte, and you'll feel okay enough to get back on the bike in half an hour or an hour. And it's a huge difference in the quality of your physical performance, being able to drink a Pedialyte and drink an equal amount of water and then get back on the bike. And the people who are starting out, they have I got a bottle of Gatorade. Like, cool, you're gonna die. You're gonna have a really bad day.
That was an unbelievably straightforward answer.
We have a cooler and like 6 Pedialytes and all the Gatorade and a whole bunch of water. Like, we literally put a bag of ice in and we just shove drinks in there until there's no more space.
Garrett can tell you how much water and ice we load just for him. It's amazingly ridiculous. It's Seth is dead on. Now, in terms of, so Seth, just FYI, and I've told Claudio and the guys this, I'm going to be taking care of a lot of the logistics, setting up our area, the pit and whatever, so that these guys just have to worry about the race, the bike, and then making sure the forms are signed and everything else. But yeah, I mean, so guys, I'm remembering as much as I can. I'm making notes. So try not to really burden yourself with the logistics, because I promise you that I'd be there to do that, and I'm going to. So yeah. So just there's just a lot that we learned last year, and Seth is right. There's so much that goes into it.
Hey, don't they have some that are flavored now that's not just a straight up Pedialyte that is a little bit more appealing?
All the flavors are gross.
Edgar, they make that for
Just-
babies who don't know the difference.
Yeah, they're just
They
different.
sell them at gas stations. I saw the other day some, multi flavors of that. I thought
There's
So-
something else that we tried. What was it, Garrett? That you tried that really was very good. It was very close to Pedialyte, and I forget the name of it.
There's one at the gas station by the track. It's in Spanish. There's a Shell gas station by Katy track that's in Spanish, and it looks just like Pedialyte and has similar content in it, and it tastes good. There's a watermelon one that's good. It's not,
I think that's what I saw, Jesse. I think you're right. It was in Spanish.
yeah, I tried it and I was just like, hey, I can't read this, but it says tastes good. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, when you get on-brand Pedialyte and you get like the Advanced Care Plus, so the really good ones where you want the kids obviously can't hold any liquid, so you need to give them all the liquid. It tastes gross. So when you get the really good stuff, it's really gross. The lower levels taste better, but the really good stuff tastes disgusting.
Well, I'm glad we don't have to drink baby formula.
If
to
it's
go out
bad,
and
it's
ride.
good.
Exactly. Garrett knows what's going on.
Yeah, I've been drinking
if it's
Pedialyte
good,
for
it's
the
bad.
last 3 years or so. It is that bad. So I just try to overlook it. It's like, yeah, I don't care. It is, yeah, I'm not drinking this to, like, it's not like I'm having a cold, nice beer at the end of the day. That's not the purpose of me drinking that thing. So like, okay.
I
So,
found
what
out that the more dehydrated you are, the more it tastes good. So I can kind of tell when I'm finally hydrated because it starts to taste disgusting. I'm like, I don't want to drink anymore because I'm like, oh, my body has decided that I'm hydrated now. But yeah, I will have chugged half a Pedialyte when I come off a bike sometimes if it's hot. And then I get to the end of this half of a Pedialyte. I'm like, oh, this tastes so gross. I'm trying to continue to drink it.
Seth, while we're
So
talking
there's
about nutrition, I just want to let you know. I'm sorry, Garrett. I didn't mean to. Go ahead, son.
So there's this kind of off-brand. It's called Electrolyte, but there's no E at the end, so that's how you know it's good. So it's just Electrolyte, and
It's lit, man.
oh yeah, it
Contains
tastes
meth.
honestly disgusting. It's horrible. I mean, I drank Pedialyte, and Pedialyte is better than that stuff. But whenever I went to Speed Sports, I just drank like a few sips of that. Well, not like gulps, and it worked. It actually worked better than Pedialyte. We got it at that gas station right next to Speed Sports. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that brand, but works for me. I don't know if there's much of a difference.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, Seth, real quick before I get off the subject, I haven't forgotten about our gentleman's bet last year. I am buying pizza this year for you because
Okay.
we lost a bet. Or I lost a bet.
We'll still bring it. At least at Speed Sports, we've got the local pizza places nailed down. So that's one thing we've done for the Speed Sports. Since I live very close to the track, we're familiar with a really good local pizza place, and my wife brings pizza for the team during the race, and it's pretty fantastic to have hot pizza show up halfway through a race.
It really is, and that kind of Claudio is something that I really try to emphasize to Garrett. and I would emphasize to you as a nutrition major or a sports medicine major, carb up. Carb up as much as you can. 2 nights before, because your body usually typically, takes a few hours to process the carbs, right? So, assuming 9 calories per gram of carb, actually it's 9 calories per fat, so it's 4 per gram of carb. Account for that energy loss of fluid, and then, obviously if there are kids, then they need to increase that intake.
That's a good point. I was gonna ask that, like, what should preparation prior to be? So of course in Texas we should all know, drink plenty of fluids, like the whole week, not the night before. So now Earl's point about carving up, is there anything else that we should consider? Okay, the week of, make sure that you're doing the following.
Yeah, there's one thing that, like, one meal that I would eat always 2 days before is chili and spaghetti. I know it sounds gross, but it's really, really good, and it puts carbs into your body, which is basically like chugging Red Bull the morning of the race. And
Which is not exactly ideal, and I don't recommend that as a father, but he is his own person.
You got your fat content, you got your carbs. What more do you need? And none of it
water.
is green.
Well,
water.
So from a scientific standpoint, the way I've coached Garrett into nutrition pre-race loading, and everybody's going to be different, but fundamentally, carbs are, for every calorie, you've got 4 grams or 4 calories to every gram. Fat has 9. So you decide exactly, how you process. You obviously don't want to, be out there and you have an upset stomach. So make sure your nutrition is fully into your body, absorbed, and anything that the body doesn't need is gone before the race. And I'm trying to be nice because there's kids around, so you can interpret that. So, but really, really front load on the carbs, really front, because it will. And the one thing that I learned last year: don't underestimate the power of bananas and potassium. Always, always have bananas and potassium on hand. The last thing you want to do is go down, forget, the race, forget everything. The last thing you want to do is go down due to a cramp. And even if you do cramp and you come in and you've got the communication down pat, well, you want to have that on hand. So if you hate bananas, well, let me know. I'll buy potassium pills. Right? So just, throw back a couple of them bad boys with some electrolyte. You're good.
Meth and potassium. Nice.
And,
ooh,
and all of this is individual. Everybody needs to know their own body. Earl will know this from running marathons. There are people who can't really take anything but, water and basic liquids during a marathon, and there's people who can grab pizza and birthday cake in the middle of a race and eat it and it's fine. And I think the last thing you want to do is barf in your helmet. So so knowing your own body and what you can get away with while you're really hot and while you're exhausted is important. So definitely go based on any experience you have doing dumb things in the heat prior to this, and then you'll sort of refine it. What makes you feel good, what makes you feel bad as you go through a season of racing.
Yeah, no, very, very true. And and Michael's in the medical field, so he can attest to this. When I was running marathons, I remember, yeah, there are things that happen to me and my body that I never accounted for. Like when I crossed the 13-mile mark, I literally had salt on my arms, just salt on my arms because I've lost so much out of my body and my pores were expanding out. Now imagine that as you guys, as riders, underneath leathers in the heat, and and so therein lies the motivation for just making sure. And I did, I used to rely on Gatorade Goo. I loved Goo, the non-caffeinated strawberry banana Goo, and that was my thing, and it helped. But it's one of those things where there's a quote that I love from one of my favorite movies in Fight Club is, how much are you going to know about yourself if you never have gotten into a fight? This is the same that goes through about a race. I mean, like, yes, I know we do track days and I know it's all good and whatever, but man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great as long as you prepare for it. Remember the 4 Ps. Right, Claudio?
Absolutely. Good deal. Very
So
cool.
when you guys go back out on track, okay, so it's your turn to ride. You're going to swap the bike out. How are you doing the bike swap? Michael's out on the track. I'm on lap 19, and I'm beat. I'm coming in. Do you make another pass around to let someone else know? This is a two-part question. That I need to switch out. I probably should have an idea of who that person is going to be coming in. But when you're making an unexpected trip in, how do you signal that to have your team ready and know that you're coming in? Are you guys working with a pit board? Are you guys just using hand signals? How do you signal, or do you just pull off the track and everybody jumps up and scrambles and goes crazy for 30 seconds?
There's two parts to that answer, really. The traditional symbol, and you'll see it in TMGP all the time, is that when somebody comes by the stands, the rider will tap the top of their helmet. And you'll see that in endurance racing all the time. And depending on your pre-formatted thing, that usually means 1 more lap or 2 more laps. So the second part of that is one of your team members, and you need people watching anyway, but one team member is always dedicated to watching the rider on track. So this is why a 2-person team is really, really hard to do. So at least 3 people. So when we have 3 people there at a team, we have 1 person on the bike, we have 1 person in the stands watching the person on the bike, and we have a 3rd person who's back in the pits and ready to go, and will be ready to go out. And we do planned half-hour stints with the idea that they could be slightly shorter, slightly longer. The Grom has a clock on it, which is amazing. So you always know what time it is and when you got on the bike and when you should come off. And so 20 minutes, 22 minutes into a stint, the person will make sure they have their back protector on, their boots are done up. 25 minutes in, their leathers will be on. And then when that person taps a helmet, it's helmet, gloves, and they're ready to go again. Some teams use pit boards, but that's primarily for other communication, letting them know their position in the race, the lap times they're doing, that sort of thing. Sometimes if somebody's reluctant to come off, you'll use a pit board to signal that it's time for you to come off. Generally, if the rider can know what half-hour time limits are, I recommend everybody who can put a clock on the bike. So you'll know what time it is. When you go out there, you look at it, you do some simple math, and you're like, all right, I got on the bike at 2:34. I'm going to come off at 3:04, and I know that, and everybody else knows that. Half an hour from when I got on the bike, I'm expected to come off. It makes everything a lot easier. Does that answer the question all the way?
Yeah, almost. The second part of the question is, you inadvertently did answer my question. It's, when I get off the bike, should I leave my leathers on, or should I climb out of my suit and let my body breathe and recover? Or should I be, again, it depends on how many people are riding on that day. Should I always be ready to ride if I'm given, someone's coming in 2 minutes, you need to get on the bike and be prepared?
You have to get out of your leathers. There's no way to ride a summer race in Texas and come off the bike and stay in your leathers. As soon as the air stops flowing through those leathers, it is dangerously hot. You have to take those off and let evaporation start to happen. Get some water on your body. I bring a wet towel that I'll put ice inside and put it on top of my head to try to cool down. It's like any other time when you're riding at the track in the summer and you come off in you park the bike and you have to pull your helmet, your gloves, and your leathers off, or you'll overheat, like dangerously overheat. So that's why we like to do at least 3 people. We rotate through. If you just got off the bike, you get off the bike, you strip off your leathers, you drink your food, and you go sit in the stands. And your job is to watch and cool down. The person who was just in the stands, their job is to get ready as much as they can to get on the bike next. And the more people you have, the more you have to rotate through that. We, in general, have a rotation. We'll start at the beginning of the event. So we know it's this person, and then this person, and then this person, and we keep that rotation consistent unless somebody gets hurt or somebody can't do it, or we've had rain events where it messes up the schedule because different people just aren't going to ride a bike on slicks in the rain. And you kind of have to respect that as a team. If somebody doesn't want to go out on slicks in the rain, you can't make them. So you have to shift things around to do that.
Gotcha. What about if the bike has to come in because of some mechanical issue? Maybe it's just an adjustment of something that got whacked out, and they have to come in at the halfway point. Do they go back out and complete their session after the adjustment is made, if it might take 3 minutes or something? Or do you do a rider swap early, or is it just it just depends on
completely up to your team
and the condition of the rider?
Really completely up to your team. In general, if we bring the bike in for any reason, we swap riders. Because it's putting somebody who's already hot back on the bike is never really a good idea. They're not mentally sharp. Usually, if you've brought a bike in for some reason, even if it's like a small crash and you bent a shift lever or something, your headspace is not great at that point. And so, bring the bike in, bend the shift lever back, put a fresh person on the bike, and send them out. And that's okay. Even from a safety standpoint, I think that's really the right thing to do. Sending someone who's just jacked on adrenaline and already hot back out on a bike is, in general, not something we like to do if we can avoid it. And then we just sort of adjust the schedule on the fly as we do that.
Because one of the challenges I was thinking is if someone comes in at the midpoint, your next rider may not be dressed and ready to go back out on the bike. Do you wait that 5 minutes for Michael to get his suit and his back protector back on and helmet to send out the other rider? And I'm using the 50% as kind of, we weren't quite ready for this, but it needed to happen. And I think a crash is a good example.
The only time we've really done that, I mean, that's the thing is if you're sitting there in the pits and you're sort of chilling and your leathers are down around your ankles and you're just hanging out, and all of a sudden the guy runs from the stands and you sort of have to wing it and do what you do. The only other thing that's happened is we've had people misinterpret times and come in after like 20 minutes. And sometimes they've come in because they thought we saw the signal. And if somebody's not ready, we'll just send them right back out again. If they didn't, they just came in and nobody was ready. If you come into the pits and run back out again and just sort of do a drive-through, it only adds, 8 or 10 seconds to a lap versus the 90 seconds or 2 minutes it takes for somebody to get their leathers on. So you can always just, wave somebody off, and the rider's just like, all right, and they head back out and do another lap. And when they come in the second time, the person's generally ready and has leathers on and is ready to go. So we've done that more than once.
This is the great line of conversation, because the one thing that Seth just reminded me of is if the rider prior, and this is where the team thing comes into play. If the rider prior doesn't understand exactly what they're supposed to do, because we have had issues in the past where I thought somebody was pitting, but it looked like they were tapping their helmet, and I misunderstood. It was my fault. And then, but unbeknownst to me, they were going to ride about, I don't know, 10 more laps, and so now I've got a rider ready to ride, and now he's mentally not there because he's ready to ride under the impression that uh, whoever this rider is that's before him is going to come in, and he's ready to jump on. Now mentally he's already frustrated. So, all those kinds of things kind of playing in. Not to mention, and Claudia, you may have this as a topic, or you may not have this as a topic, but let alone the grid and the start and everything else. But the transition points are so important to be smooth. Uh, I cannot overstate that. It that's where I saw Garrett having issues last year. And so yeah, just the communication, say, all right, look, if we understand that this is either X amount of time or X amount of laps, and you come in and this is what we're going to do, and I'll have my boots on, I'll have my helmet on, I'll have this and all that, and do whatever. You cannot over communicate on those transitions, because that over communication is just going to be just normalized behavior when you guys actually come in. It's just safety, fundamental safety.
Yeah, there's the whole plan and then improvise thing, but you do need to plan. You have a plan, everybody knows what that plan is, and then of course it's subject to change because we're racing, things happen.
Yep.
But the more everybody understands what the plan is going to be, the better it will go. And you can look at our team last year. We were very seldom the fastest Grom in our class. We ran the Grom class last year, but we won over half the races. I think we ran 5 races last year, and we won 3 of them in our class. And then we won the championship, not because we were the fastest, setting the fastest lap times, but because we spent the most time on the bike. Spending time off the bike, either because you crashed it or because of pit communications or whatever that is dead time. You don't win a race in the pits, but you definitely lose one there.
Cool.
Well said.
Lets me pretend like I'm an old school Le Mans racer as well, so I like that.
Oh, that's what we need, where we have to run across the track, get on the bike at the start. When the gun goes off, you have to run to your bike and push start it. Old school.
I have electric start on the Grom. I'm totally fine with that.
Well said. I will tell you that and I hope Michael doesn't mind me saying this, but he is the proud owner of a beautiful Grom that I used to own.
Yeah, Seth, we've already texted a little bit about it. We have plans at work for the Grom. I'm gonna learn a lot of mechanical technique. I'm aware at this point.
But yeah, I mean, not to get off the topic, but just FYI, that the map that's on the Grom right now with the PC2 is ridiculous.
And I haven't told you this yet, Michael, but I have a spare stock ECU. So if you want a baseline, I can probably loan you the stock ECU just for you to baseline that bike, which is not 100% relevant to the show. Although I wouldn't be super surprised if the first race you guys do is on the Kaio, and then for the second race you go, maybe racing at Grom's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Which is why I offered it. It went from being a show bike for Marvel Comics to a race bike for BTT.
The Cardboard Avenger. It will have a cardboard fairing. Seth, have you done this before, a cardboard fairing? You have, haven't you?
I have never done a cardboard fairing. I ride dirt
Yeah.
bikes. You know I ride dirt bikes. You've seen my XR 100 that I love, right? I'm a dirt bike guy. Fairings are nonsense anyway.
Yeah, but it covers the surfaces you really don't want to have to clean. I know you don't clean anything.
I'm a dirt bike guy. We just spray it off with a hose and call it good.
Thinking of dirt bikes, one thing in preparation, we found this out. Dirt bike helmets really good for endurance races because it's really hot. And for some reason, dirt bike people like all of the airflow, and because like big bikes, you need to have things keep out of your face.
Yeah.
And doing little bikes, you need a lot less of that. So you can pick up a really cheap helmet. It doesn't need to be $1,000 helmet, but like a good helmet that's not that expensive, and get goggles, and you can race it in TMGP because it's still a helmet and it still covers your face and everything. And you get a lot less hot because you have so much more airflow through your head.
Yeah, the best vented road helmet in the world flows about 10% of the air of any motocross helmet with goggles.
That is a really good point, Sonia.
You'll probably see our entire team running motocross helmets with goggles in the summer months, purely for that reason. When we
a great point.
Yeah, no, that is very astute, Sonia. Good point.
Yeah, I think that means I need to bring chapstick with me.
That sounds like a vanity issue, but sure.
Yeah.
Although weirdly, now I'm thinking of goggles. That's the other thing. The races, a number of the races we run will start running in the daylight and finish in the dark. And thinking about what sort of visor or what goggles you have, whether they're tinted or not, makes a difference. Tinted visors in the dark, even though the lights are on, tinted visors in the dark are not that much fun to race with. But
so
perfect
the races
clear
that are in the
visors
dark
when the sun
only...
is setting.
So I wanted to ask really quick, the ones where you're running in the dark, those only occur at speed sports? I'm thinking because I've never looked at Katy, whether there are actually lights anywhere. I don't know. I've never been there that late.
The ones at Denton will often run into the night as well.
Okay.
Katie's during the day, but speed sports in Denton will run into the dark.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things that Cody mentioned to Garrett when we first started as well.
See, there's more new motorcycling things we haven't done coming.
What, visors? Come on, man. That's like the very first thing you do. Like the biggest, like, you get a mirror visor.
Yeah, I only have
funny.
the dark visor, so that's a good note for me.
The showy helmet that I have has a transition visor. It's like $160, so it transitions pretty fast. But I don't know. I've never rode it at night, and I know when it goes out in the sun, it transitions pretty dark. I don't know how it is back from dark back to light or clear.
We all carry everybody in our team carries spare visors, partly for the tint thing, but also almost everybody on our team has crashed at some point in such a way that our face hits the cement. And I don't know what it is about us that does that, but if you scratch the middle of your visor, you're done for the day. Like you can't see.
Seth, you're not doing crash drills.
No, I'm just saying it's something that's actually bizarrely been an issue on our team in the past, is
it's
having
so true.
a visor so that they can continue riding.
It
I'm
is so true.
Have to do that, but
yeah. No, it is so true because when I used to ride, I mean, my eyes adjust fairly well in reverse transition from daylight to night, and I've never really had an issue, but I've seen guys go down just because of perception or astigmatism or whatever they have. And I've got astigmatism, but I've been lucky enough to where, my transition. But yeah, no, that That's I can't even believe I didn't think of that last year. I mean, we bought extra visors and everything else, but I didn't think about different shades because we have a shaded visor, we have a mirrored visor, we have several clears. Garrett prefers clears, but yeah, no, that's a really good point.
See, and that's why we got together tonight.
Yep. No headlights.
Well,
Actually, the only
let's not inflate Seth's ego too much.
This is all things I've learned because I did stuff wrong, right? It's not that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm smart enough to figure this out. It's more like, I screwed this up and now I know something. That's
It's
my
Yeah.
history of doing things.
Yeah, it's when you see somebody else go down and you're like, Jesus, I wish I'd have thought of that. And as a coach for Garrett, that's my biggest concern all the time. What am I not thinking of? What am I? It's always the exceptions that wind up messing up my plans.
Yeah, my goal was to turn more than 10 laps because I did something stupid and couldn't do more.
Very cool. So as we get ready to, wrap things up here, guys, are there any closing questions, things that we didn't cover that we thought we were going to be going over?
We went over a lot of things that I wasn't prepared to. Oh my God, this was just, this was worth money big time. Just to not go out and make mistakes and go, well, next time I'll get to actually ride because I brought cash to the track.
Right?
Yeah. So
It's amazing.
Thank you for getting on and sharing with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Seth, really, that's you guys, both you and Sonia. Every single time I see you guys on the track, like I love hanging out with you guys. You guys are amazingly talented. Wish you guys the best of luck this year, and thanks for the advice.
We're still trying to. We work hard to build the community. Every time we're at the track, we try to be the motorcycle because they're fundamentally they're all kart tracks. So we try to be the motorcycle guys that people recognize as being good people, not only by other motorcyclists, but by the karters, so that we can build a friendly community where everybody wants to ride, everybody wants to allow riders to ride at the kart tracks, and everybody's excited about it enough that they want to come race with us and participate in the full range of activities with small bikes. So Sonia and I are both very conscious of the fact that the community we have is one that we build, and we want to build it the right way.
That's brilliant.
Happy to join in.
Absolutely. And Seth, I would like one last ask that I have is you have a podcast. So let's plug your podcast. Tell us about it. What do you do? How often do you upload episodes and tell us about?
We record and upload once a week. The podcast is called Track Walking. And it's a podcast I do with a friend of mine named Scott that I met doing One Lap of America, which is a week-long time trial event. It's actually the successor of the Cannonball Run. And it was developed by Brock Yates after the Cannonball became super illegal and they were all going to go to jail. So you drive around the country for a week and you do a time trial at a different track every day. 6 tracks, and starts in Indiana and goes out as far as Colorado, Florida, just tracks everywhere. It goes a different route every year. So we met there. We have a love of playing with cars, and I keep dragging motorcycle stuff into it as much as I can, which drives some of the car guys nuts. But again, trying to build the community because I think there's value for car guys to cross over into motorcycles, especially minis, because you can get so much seat time, an absurd amount of seat time. Whether you ride big bikes or you drive cars or you do anything, the ability to go to a kart track twice a week or twice a month or whatever it is much more than your ability to go to a big track. And I think there's some good crossover for bike guys to go drive cars and just to be in a different dynamic situation, because it brings you out of things that are automatic to you. You understand bikes and you do things and you lean and you do that, and all of a sudden you get in a car where you're rigid and everything is just through the tires and just through your butt, and you're not really part of the car the same way you are part of a bike. And I think it makes you intellectualize this nonsense that we're doing. So we talk about philosophy of stuff, cars and tracks, and why we do these dumb hobbies and all of that. So you can find us wherever there's podcasts. Just look up Track Walking or Track Walking Podcast, and you can listen to the other nonsense that I talk about.
Very cool.
Sounds appealing.
Have you,
More that-
Seth? Have you just one quick question? Have you ever done 24 Hours of Lemons?
I haven't. Only because culturally, 24 Hours of Lemons is a little bit weird.
Yeah, it is.
And you have to be, for me to be comfortable, you have to be at the right event with the right people, and that just hasn't popped up yet.
That is a good point. That's exactly
I really
why
don't want to be on MSR Houston with 70 cars at a time. Nothing about that appeals to me.
Holy
So
crap.
Exactly.
I will do endurance racing in cars. I just have to have the right time in the right place. And since I'm racing motorcycles with my daughter right now, it's really hard to justify spending the time and money to do more car stuff when the little bikes are accessible and my kids with me, and it's as fun as it is. So
I understand, brother. Yep, I get it.
Nice. I think Jesse was gonna drop some comment there.
Oh, I was just saying because he was talking about his podcast, and I was looking at his shirt, and I was like, product placement.
not exactly an accident.
Yeah, no, I noticed that as well. Good job.
Well, now I know what that is, because I was wondering the whole time from the beginning.
Very cool. Oh, excellent. Any closing thoughts, guys?
I want to see you all there. I want to see everybody endurance race.
No rain,
that's
no
my
rain,
whole goal.
no rain, no rain, no freezing 70
Yeah,
degrees.
it's not too cold. Katie, it's so slippery when it's cold. I really don't want to do that. It's also slippery when it's rainy. I really want to do that. I want it to be like 78 and sunny. That's what I'm looking for. But the
Beautiful.
early season races are always weird. It could be 40, it could be 90. You never really know. But yeah, I want everybody to race. That's it. I want everybody who listened to this to, if you have a mini, to make sure it passes tech and fits into one of those classes and come out. If you don't have a mini yet, go buy one so that you can come race with us, because I really would love to see a grid. Usually our grids are 15 to 22 type, 15 to 20 bikes. I would love to see the problem being that we have so many teams that we're not sure if we can fit that many bikes on track. That would make me happy. Would love to see 30 bikes.
That'd be so awesome.
That would be fantastic.
And I'll, the only thing I would add to what Seth said is I definitely want to, I loved watching the evolution of Garrett. I love watching what Seth did with Sonia this past year, the communication, the way she's advanced. She's advanced tremendously, and I'm so proud of her, and I'm so proud of you, Seth, for the way that you've done it. I try to do my part. I talk to Kirk and Kaylee, and that dad kid relationship is just one of those. It either works or it doesn't, right? So, I just lots of kudos to you for what you did, Sonia. You're a good kid fundamentally, and that is the most important thing. You're also a really good rider. You're really fast. You're awesome. But the most important thing is the fact that you've got a great dad that supports you. And I hope that this continues to grow, and these kinds of relationships continue to grow in the community, because we need more legacy. And I don't want it to end with Nikki Hayden. I just want to see Stars and Stripes in her head.
And now I got 3 mini bikes in my trailer. If anybody needs a loaner, I'm happy to bring one to the track. Just the mini bikes are not as accessible to get unless you're going to buy a Grom or something, but I'm happy to bring the trailer if you want to bring 2 people out.
I also have a Ducati 1199 Panigale if anybody wants to ride it.
I will ride that bike at Speed Sports for you, Earl.
I can't wait for that shit. I'm gonna crash it so hard.
That thing is ridiculous, my friend.
Sometimes ridiculous is exactly what we need. Halfway show, something.
Wait a minute. Now, guys just made me think of something, a good way to close this out. So we started this by saying, endurance is an individual sport with a team. That's not quite right, because I have heard and I've seen videos of some two-up racing with Seth and Garrett. You wanna talk about that?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Oh.
I think Garrett and I have both agreed that we will never do that again with each other. That was a one-time thing. It's the scariest thing I've ever done on a motorcycle, was having Garrett charge into a corner and having me yell at him, "This has drum brakes."
I still remember that pit-in. Seth comes in, he's like, I was yelling the whole time.
Yeah, 2-up's a blast.
Yep.
Me and Cody did it, dragging knee at the same time. It gets scary then, but
Oh my lord. Yeah, I've read about some of the classes. I think I need a video to understand what each one was. The whole backwards concept.
They only
what
do
the
that at the
hell
end
is
of the
that?
year. Right. They only do that at the end of the year, right, Seth? I mean,
That's just the at the awards day, they do silly races, they do slow races, they do two-up races, they do a bunch of things just for fun. We do collect enough 50s together that we do like a relay race of 50s. So you have like 4 people on a team, and the bikes will go around, and so everybody's riding tiny bikes and trying to beat each other in a relay race. And so that's just the very last day at the awards day. The rest of the time, Michael just asked about the backwards race. The last race of the day, they run the track backwards.
Right.
So it's once you realize that, it is exactly what it sounds like. Last race of the day, anybody can enter, and the track is run in the reverse direction.
Okay.
But
I
here's
can do that.
the great part about
I
it.
actually like taking reverse direction. I prefer to ride Katie in reverse.
Yeah, no, I mean honestly, by the time those races come around, you're essentially so like exhausted and beat up. You're actually probably, all the pressure's off of you. And I've seen some of the best riding, honestly, at some of the last races, because you're the mental fatigue is out. You're done. You know what you did, and now you're just having fun. But yeah, that's funny. Oh man, Seth, you brought that up, and good lord.
So you guys actually do a 1-lap slow race around the track? Is that a 4-hour event? That's got
No, they'll do it in the pits. So it's it's like a bracket competition that's like 20 yards long. So you have like 4 bikes, and whoever can go the slowest advances, and so you do just that thing. It really, in all honesty, there's like a quiver of races that Jeff has, and he just sort of like says, okay, we're gonna do this. The 50cc team race that we did last year, the switch with it was that everybody who was not on the bike had to be in the pits with their boots and gloves off, and you couldn't.
I remember that. Yes.
On until the bike came into the pits. So the rider would do a lap and come in, and then you had to put your boots and gloves on and get on the bike.
Right. Yeah. Because we never practiced taking our boots and gloves off that entire year in a timed fashion.
Pro tip with that: if you have boots like some of the less expensive road race boots that have the big Velcro on the side, you don't have to zip them up. Slap the Velcro on.
Yeah. I know. You told me that last year.
Pretty cool. Well, guys, thank you all so much. This is great content. I've learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure everybody will appreciate that. The folks who catch this on video later when I upload it tomorrow. So, yeah, thanks a lot, guys, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is gonna be fun.
Claudia,
Thank you for having us on.
any of you guys need any more reference, please, reach out in terms of logistics. All right. But from now until March, when the first race is, I just go ahead and leave it up to you guys on figuring out the order, bikes, whatever, and I'll take care of all logistics. But Seth, thank you again. Sonia, thank you.
Yes.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome.
Very cool, guys. Y'all have a good evening.
Awesome. Thanks,
Y'all
guys.
See you
too.
later.
All right. Bye.